negative energy. This has been a theme recently within my meditations and within the group that I've been a part of. And oftentimes, people see Chelsea and I as just like super happy and positive. And we get feedback every now and again that people say, well, I don't want to bring my negative energy into your space. So I wanted to talk about two different types of what we call negative energy. To make it simple, there's what could be considered persistent negative energy. And this is energy that stays as suffering in the head. So this is often associated with not getting what we want out of life, not having agreement on the character that we think we want to play, the illusional character that we want to play. And it's somebody that doesn't understand the process of bringing that energy out of the head and bringing it into the heart. And that is very different than just transmuting energy. I think of it in fun terms, that it's the tenderizing energy, it's the tenderizing agent that dilates our hearts and opens us to bigger and greater expansion. And I struggled with this for many years, not really wanting to label it, and I also didn't want to label it in my head, but I knew that there was a difference. When I was around somebody that had persistent negative energy, I had no connection to that. And it was something that I just had to manage inside to make sure that I hold my own buoyant energy and stay where I am. And then I could be in one conversation with that kind of energy and feel no true connection. I couldn't feel the heart energy within me. And then I could be with another person who was drawn to tears and, suffering, and then I would just light up and my chest would light up. And I felt that tenderizing energy come through me and activate me, and sitting with people in that sense. So a real good example of this in real life is, like, we did a music share where we shared music. And the one thing that I didn't coach at the beginning of it was share things on how you feel. So we should share our feelings. And this is what I mean by sharing our feelings. Oftentimes people take that as I should just, whatever's coming through my head, if it's negative or whatever, I'm just going to share that. And that isn't what that expression is about. You share your feelings, like the actual feeling that you're feeling. And oftentimes people struggle with, you say, what are you feeling? And they'll tell you a story. And you say, no, that's the story that's coming from and arising from the feeling. What is the feeling that you're feeling? And so in this music share, we were going around and somebody would play something light, dancey, and bubbly and express, how it made them feel. And then somebody would want to change the vibe, but they would be apologetic and say, I don't want to bring the group down. And it's like, it doesn't bring the group down. If the music and the energy, it has a beautiful theme behind it, it will hit us in the heart, and we will be tenderized by that experience. So when I think of, like, I don't want to chase anybody out when they're going through heartache. And it's because I feel it. I feel the connection with them through that energy. And if you think about the mind energy, the persistent negative thoughts, it's like that's a lot of what Paradigm A does, is they're just constantly relating with each other from the mind. People, and I was in this place, I can remember doing that. And then we're like, oh, I don't want to share it. And then we'd get a little bit of, oh, I don't want to share that negative energy. But it really comes down to, are you transmuting it? Are you in a place? So it's, somebody's been going through a lot of suffering over years, and I see a lot of people just staying in their spellbound with what they believe to be true and not taking the suffering down into the heart and doing the processing. It's like that's the game. And once we learn that, that's where the magic happens. So bring me a person that's ready to deal with the heartache, because I can actually do something. When people are coming from the mind and they continue to suffer from the mind, we can somewhat coach people, but until they're ready to go, hey, I don't want to do this anymore. Like, I want a different way of looking at the world or experiencing the world. That's when they open up and say, okay, all right, I'm ready to listen to something outside of the story that I just spellbound, listening to the language that keeps going. So there's a big difference in that energy. And, I was late to the game on the frequency and the vibration, but these are all really, really tangible things that have happened over me for the last 4 or 5 years, to where it's like I started to feel like I was broken and I wasn't feeling compassion for certain people in certain situations. And I recognized, like, I'm not analyzing this person. I'm sitting with them, but I'm not connecting to their energy. And then I started to notice that where was the energy coming from? Just because somebody's crying doesn't mean that energy is being transformed and transmuted. I can still sit with somebody in that state. And I do sit with people in that state. But I know the sensation, and that's kind of an interesting idea to introduce to people, is it's okay to bring your broken heart to me. You can bring your grief to me. And it's because I know that transformative and transmuted energy shows up in unification and connection. And that feeling feels really good. So, just thinking about, where's that energy? Is it staying in a suffering state? Or is it time to get out of the cursed context, to get out of being spellbound, and start taking that pain into the heart? Because this is the way that I see it, is that the suffering that we do, where we just think that life just sucks and you need to get through it, that's all the rational heart. I'm a good person, but yet the circumstances of my life suck, and my character doesn't fit in, and nobody will listen to me, and nobody understands. That's all in the what I call the rational heart that lives in the mind, and we tap into it. I remember that. I always felt like I had these deep intentions of wanting to be a good person, to be a true person. But I recognized along the way that my intention didn't always serve, because I was coming from the rational heart. I was coming from an analysis of the world, a conceptual analysis that I had in the world on who I was, what everybody should believe, how we should believe things, what we should see. And once we're tapped out of the rational heart and we allow the embodiment of grief and suffering, I don't see it as negative energy. In fact, it's the most beautiful energy. It's so scrumptious and wonderful because it's unifying. It's, if you feel as if all men were created equal, we're all one. We can hold that as a concept, but to actually feel it with one another. And that connection is in the heart. And we can take this on. And we can embody this. And we can move forward with it. The idea of the non-guru. So there's a lot of talk with the new earth, the new world, 5D, all the different ways to say it, about the time of the guru is ending. And that has been especially interesting for me along my path, in that I was just a confused individual growing up. Just like, I'm a human. I don't know what I'm doing here. I don't know what to believe in. And I kind of just said, all right, like, what do I know? And I always had a sense that I wanted to be a teacher. And so I eventually, through clomping around for a little bit in life, I ended up being a teacher for many years and grew tired of that. And mostly because of the administration aspect of, and the way that education was being created. But I always felt this. And so every time that I went into something new, I went into owning many businesses, real estate investing, and I did all of these things. And in each one of those things, I felt myself, I'd learn the modality and then I'd want to be a teacher. I'd learn the modality, then I'd want to be a teacher. I did it with stand-up. I did it with public speaking. I did it with personal boundaries. I did it with spirituality. I did it with real estate investing. And once I had what I call my awakening, that's when I figured out that I can love everybody and I can love everything and I can love life. Let's just make that awakening the easiest way. Now, I'm not saying I was done. There was still tweaking to go on, but I certainly had the big pressure off. But something else changed inside of me. And it was also something that took me away. I was also a psychotherapist for a few years along the way. And there was something that was drawing me away from the profession. It wasn't that I didn't feel helpful. I knew I felt helpful because people would come to me and, they felt lighter. But they came to me. They didn't come to me wanting complete wholeness. And that's what I wanted to share. They wanted to fix a certain problem. They wanted a diagnosis so they could take their diagnosis and be part of their identity. And along that, I started to get this sense that that attachment to being a teacher was leaving, which was kind of weird because it was always kind of a persistent thing. And then all of a sudden, I'm like, I don't feel that anymore. And so I started the Paradigm B YouTube channel back in 2022, I believe. And what I wanted to share on there was just what I was experiencing and how to look at things. And I know that people still kind of look up to me on calls, and there's part of that. And there is something about looking up. I had a mentor for many years, and I really allowed his teachings. Like I really said, I want to commit to this person and that point of view, because he feel like every time I would have a conversation with him, I'd just be just enlivened, and I would feel life. But there's also this part that's really grown, that's like, all I really want to do is kind of get people, like, show breadcrumbs and just, and I don't care if I'm sending them to another voice that's speaking these terms. Like, that, it's not about me. It's not about pulling, needing to be the guru, taking somebody into the light. I feel more like a prospector, going out and looking and seeing what this new world, this B perspective, gives me and allows me to see. And for the way that I would language that is the ability to see the beautiful thing. So usually when in the suffering mind and in the mind of right and wrong, we get trapped in a dualistic mind. We get trapped between two ideas. And then we just try to, in the Paradigm A, we just say, this is right. And then we tell everybody else, this is what you've got to follow. And you're, again, just a slave to another idea. And you realize that you are the inspiration. You are the person that can wake up to finding the beautiful perspective. And that's Paradigm B. And I find that that's what I'm sharing with people, is this was my old thinking, this is my new thinking. And that new thinking is, man, it's bringing me to enjoying life, which I see as the greatest experience of being a human. That is the element of the journey. If I said, what's the purpose of life? It's to learn how to love life itself. It's the greatest love of all. And you could even say, if that was the wording you use, God, to learn to love God more than yourself. And you're saying more than my little self, more than the ego. And so the things I share on Paradigm B with Lenzafarianism and stuff, it's all just prospecting. It's all just going out and finding the little breadcrumbs that are coming along. And this is the new language. This is the new way of being. So I like the idea of the non-guru. I like the idea of being collaborators, more of collaborators than in look up to that person, or go look up to that person. Go look up, and I don't want people to look up to me. That's what I want to shake out of people, is that all that power exists within you. It's just been going in different directions. We can harness it and bring it along for the ride. And that's why I like the idea of the gifting, a sharing of resources. I like the idea that people who want to connect with me personally get to find it in themselves, how much they want to offer in this game. And to me, it's just practice to when money isn't going to be the most powerful value. It'll be us sharing in small communities and finding community again. That connection that we've lost with the internet and ideas and systems that needed to evolve and need to be broken down and changed and it all's going to come closer to the individual, because that's the thing about having that connection with through the internet, is that our attention gets projected really far outside of ourselves, and then we start dealing with things that we don't need to talk about, like the perfect example of suffering energy, and just how many people just marinate themselves in projecting on things that they have very little control in. But at underneath it, there's like, if I'm suffering, this is my martyrdom. Like, I'm meant to be a martyr with the suffering I'm doing, because I'm out there telling everybody what's wrong in the world. And it sounds delusional as I'm saying this, but it's happening right out in front of us. And that's why I like the idea that that's so beautiful, because it's becoming so ridiculous that I'm seeing it as a cartoon. It's like literally The Simpsons is coming alive in our world. And it's so discombobulated. And the beautiful thing is, you just say, oh my God, all these people are suffering. Well, it's also, they're going to get to the end of the line when they can no longer hold these points of view that are so ridiculous that they have to look somewhere else. They have to start questioning the context. They have to start questioning their operating system. And that's how we see the new world being birthed. And what a great segue to move into enthusiasm. What came through me today on the Sensation of the Day with Lenzafarianism, and what a powerful agent enthusiasm has been within my life. And it's because it's attitude, and it's so choosable. We get to choose to be enthusiastic. It's like this, it's buoyancy. So take the example of how much we just live our days in pre-digestion. Let's say where you have to go to a job, and maybe there's meetings that we just hate to be a part of. And to look at this, and enthusiasm is to rise. We want to rise. And so the idea is buoyancy. Do I have positive buoyancy? Do I have neutral buoyancy? Or do I have negative buoyancy? So here's one thing you just change. Is like, maybe you don't like the meetings, but just thinking about the idea of all the pre-digestion that we have before we get to the meeting. Oh God, then I've got my 2 to 3 and I'm just going to be miserable. And how many times did we reach into that bag in our minds and just keep telling ourselves, and then literally we'll voice it out to, oh God, I got another meeting today. God, I got another meeting. And we just embroil ourselves in this negative, buoyant energy. And so, another example for me was depression, and having experienced the challenge of depression quite a few times in my life. And even when I had known the idea of changing my attitude to enthusiastic, and to enthusiasm with depression, that's like, I don't know, like trying to take a log off of a tire with a screwdriver. It's just like, it's not available in that time. But all the times when I'm in depression, I'm monitoring it. I'm monitoring my inner state. And if I'm negatively buoyant, it's like that's charging my experience. That's what my experience is going to be. So I would get to the point where when I really got good at coaching myself to get that enthusiasm going, it's like, I want to get up to negative buoyancy. And that was my whole goal. Because I knew if I could get my body and my cells back to neutral, then I would be able to work from neutral. And then it was about the attitude. And it's just adding in. It's just the way we look at things. That's the beautiful thing. It's perspective. And enthusiasm, I think of it like we create the surf. We create the waves for all these other beautiful sensations, sincerity, kindness to ride upon. But we need to be, that's the thing we have such good control over. That's what Lenzafarianism is completely about, is about finding ways to look at things, changing our perspective so that our little avatar, our little perception of the world enjoys the world. That's all we're doing. We have that ability to change our perspective until we enjoy what our perception is. And what a cool thing to just think about that. And just to just have that as a seed as you think of how enthusiasm looks. You don't have to look at it as, enthusiasm's just that person that kicks in the door and wahoo all the time. Enthusiasm is inside of you. Where are you? Just check in. Be aware. Where do you feel? Are you neutral? Are you positive? Or are you negative? And that can be all your work. That can be all your play, is just monitoring it. It's like, you could even add them up. This is math. It's like, just make sure at the end of the day, you're at least at neutral buoyancy or above. I was thinking, it's just, if somebody were to know, because a lot of people will see somebody like Chelsea and I who are just really floating in a lot of enjoying life and have found the love of life. But, there's still clinks in our world. But sometimes people see us and they're just like, oh my God, that's too much. I can't do it. It's too far. It's like, how do they live in the delusion that's making them experience the world the way they are? I can see that. Well, here's a way to do it. Set yourself a goal to get to 51%. I just want to be just above neutral buoyancy at the end of the day, where I can go, yeah, that was a good day. Because good is a great place to step off to great. And once you get a hang of this, once you get the hang of Lenzafarianism, whether you call it Lenzafarianism or not, it's just a fun name, because we wanted something that would be fun to offer to people, to be able to tell them, this is what I'm up to. I'm Lenzafarifying things. I'm a Lenzafarian. But just think about that beautiful energy, that enthusiasm that can bring you through your day. And then maybe that meeting that was just so horrific that you go to, that'll shift. And even if you just get to the point where that hour of those meetings is just neutral buoyancy, so you're just experiencing being in the meeting, rather than it being just dragging yourself through time. And it's an interesting thing now that I have this beautiful understanding that that's really all Paradigm B is now, and it's our relationship to time. In fact, most of the suffering that we see in the world is simply a disorder, a chronological time disorder. So being present, you may not have these swaths of amazing, like juicy energy. You may, but you're at least practicing. You're calibrating to being able to get back to neutral when you want to. And that's all about calibrating your inner guidance system, your own emotional guidance system. And that's the key. That's the feeling. That's the sensation. Neutral buoyancy. And some people live in a high anxiety state, in a negative buoyant state, and that becomes their normal. They don't even know what it feels like to experience, because they are so caught up in the mind story that they believe their anxiety to be the way the world works. It's just we came here to worry. We came here to suffer. We came here to be afraid and to find every way to bubble wrap reality so it's easy on me. That's all in the mind story. So I'm always, always, always wishing you wellness. And when I say wellness, I'm saying wholeness. And wholeness is tangible. You'll feel that inner power when you are in charge of how you feel, when you set how your emotional system is going to be. That's when all that juiciness bubbles up. That's when all that true power bubbles up. Just the power to be able to sit with somebody in silence. To hold space for somebody. Because that's what you're doing to prepare for that, is dilating your heart. Getting that vessel. I thought of my heart as this process of transformation started happening. Terms I was in was alchemy. And I could continue to grow where I could sit with deeper levels of other people's grief. And I have yet now to find anybody that has more grief than I can handle. Be well, be whole, and I'm excited.